Hello, my friend. Tonight we stand on a dark shore, listening as the sea begins to breathe like something alive. The night is warm, but no one is sleeping. Above the island, the moon hangs pale and blurred behind a veil of ash-coloured cloud. Below it, black water gathers beyond the harbour walls, lifting and falling with a rhythm that feels wrong. The tide has already climbed higher than the oldest sailors remember. It slides over the lower stones. It fills the narrow alleys near the quay. It touches the painted feet of statues that have watched the harbour for generations. Farther inland, lamps burn in the windows of houses built from white stone and red timber. Families stand in doorways, silent and uncertain, their faces lit by oil flames. Children hold clay charms against their chests. Dogs bark and then fall quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a bronze bell rings once, then again, each note drifting through the streets like a question no one wants to answer. At the centre of the city, where sacred canals circle the royal hill, priests climb the steps of a temple wet with mist. Their robes cling to their bodies, their sandals slip on polished stone. They carry bowls of water, garlands of flowers, and small figures of bulls carved from ivory. They whisper prayers to the god of the sea, but the wind steals the words away. Beneath their feet, the ground gives a low shudder. It is not a violent shaking, not yet. It is more like the island taking a deep breath. In the great harbour, hundreds of ships groan against their moorings. Some are broad merchant vessels with bellies full of copper, tin, grain, purple cloth, and jars of scented oil. Others are long warships, lean and watchful, their painted eyes staring toward the open sea. Their crews have been called from sleep. Men stumble barefoot across decks, tying ropes, lowering sails, pulling cargo away from the rising water. They speak in short, careful phrases. No one laughs. Beyond the outer wall, where the sea should be smooth, something strange is happening. The water withdraws. At first, only the fishermen see it. They're gathered near the breakwater, old men with scarred hands and young boys sent to carry rope. They watch as the harbour mouth empties like a bowl tipped by an unseen hand. Rocks appear in the moonlight. Fish twist in the mud. Anchors settle against the exposed seabed. The smell rises quickly. Salt, weed, rot, and deep water open to the air. One boy steps forward, amazed. His father pulls him back. For a moment, the world seems still. The bell stops. The dogs stop. Even the wind seems to pause above the towers, the courts, the baths, the storehouses, and the bright palace at the heart of the rings. Then a sound comes from far beyond the harbour, so low that it is felt before it is heard. It rolls beneath the ribs, it enters the stones, it turns every face toward the dark line of the horizon. The sea is returning, out there, under the moon. A wall of water rises from the blackness. It does not glitter. It does not break beautifully. It moves with the heavy patience of a mountain sliding across the world. The people on the quay do not understand its size at first. Human eyes are poor judges of disaster. A wave seen from far away may look almost gentle, but the sailors know. They have measured storms with their bodies. They have survived reefs, squalls, hunger, and the long loneliness of open water. When they see the shape approaching the harbour, their mouths go dry. Some run inland, some freeze, some fall to their knees. In the royal quarter, guards hurry through bronze gates, calling for the nobles to leave the lower courts. Servants gather scrolls, seals, golden cups, ledgers of tribute, maps drawn on linen, and small chests filled with stones from distant lands. A woman in a high chamber looks out over the city and sees torches moving through the streets like frightened stars. She hears the cry of the harbour people. Then the palace floor trembles again, stronger now, and a painted vase slides from a shelf and shatters beside her feet. The city has been built to command water. Canals cut through it in perfect circles. Bridges cross from ring to ring. Docks receive wealth from every coast that knows the western sea. Engineers have shaped stone channels, locks, walls, and basins with astonishing confidence. They have made water obedient. They have turned the sea into a road, a shield, a market, and a mirror of royal power. But tonight, the sea refuses its role. The first wave strikes the outer works with a force beyond language. Stone blocks leap, ships rise as if lifted by invisible hands. Masts snap, ropes sing and break. The sound is not only a crash, it is timber, bronze, pottery, walls, animals, voices, and water becoming one terrible noise. The harbour vanishes beneath foam. Men who were standing on dry stones are gone between one breath and the next. Then the water enters the city. It races through streets made for processions, through markets scented with spice and fish, through courtyards where fountains have always murmured gently. It tears open doors, it lifts carts, it carries tables, roof beams, bodies, baskets of grain, and sacred offerings in the same blind rush. Lamps go out. Darkness folds over whole districts. The moonlight breaks in fragments across the flood. On the temple steps, the priests cling to columns. One of them still holds the ivory bull. His lips move, but no sound can rise above the sea. He looks toward the royal hill, toward the statue of the god, toward the rings of water that once made the city seem eternal. For the first time in his life, he sees that the design of a city can become a trap, and yet, amid the terror, there are small acts that no chronicle would easily remember. A mother lifts her child onto a roof before the water reaches her waist. A sailor cuts loose a boat not for cargo, but for strangers calling from a balcony. A servant returns for an old man who cannot walk. A young guard throws away his spear and uses both hands to pull people through a gate. In the last hours of a proud civilization, courage is not carved into monuments. It is carried in the dark by ordinary hands. The ground splits near the southern canal. A line opens in the stone pavement, narrow at first, then widening with a sound like pottery breaking under the earth. Warm vapour rises. The smell of sulphur spreads through the flood. Somewhere beneath the island, forces older than kings are moving. Faults grind, chambers collapse, fire and water, hidden for ages, meet in darkness. The island is not merely being drowned from above, it is being broken from below. The second wave comes before the people can understand the first. It climbs over the ruined harbour walls, higher than the watchtowers, higher than the carved lions at the sea gate. It sweeps across the docks and crashes into the inner rings. Bridges collapse. Storehouses burst open. Grain pours into the water like pale sand. Bronze shields spin away. Painted columns fall in slow, impossible arcs. The palace lamps disappear one by one. From the hills beyond the city, survivors look back and see the proud centre of their world swallowed in darkness and spray. The rings of Atlantis, if that is what this place is, no longer shine like the work of gods. They become circles of black water, turning under a broken moon. By dawn, the island is changed beyond recognition. Smoke hangs above the lowlands. The harbour is filled with wreckage, where streets once crossed dry ground. Fish move in silence. The sea keeps coming, patient and grey, covering thresholds, courtyards, temples, records, bones and names. No messenger can carry the whole truth. No witness can see enough. In time, memory will become story. Story will become warning. Warning will become legend. And beneath that legend, perhaps as something real will remain. To measure the world of Atlantis, we must first stand at the edge of the known sea. There, where the Mediterranean narrows and the cliffs rise like gates. Ancient sailors looked west with caution. On one side stood the rugged coast of Iberia, dry hills, bright stone, hidden rivers, and forests where metal slept beneath the earth. On the other side stood North Africa, with its ochre mountains, desert winds, and long shores washed by the same restless water. Between them, the strait opened like a passage between certainty and rumour. The Greeks would later call these heights the Pillars of Heracles. To pass them was to leave the familiar world. Behind a ship lay islands, harbours, temples, markets, and stories carried from city to city. Ahead lay the Atlantic, wider, colder, darker, and less forgiving than the enclosed sea of the East. Its swells rolled in from distances beyond imagination. Its storms could rise without warning. Its horizon seemed not like a line, but like a boundary of human courage, and yet sailors went there. They went because the ancient world was never still. Long before maps became confident, men followed coastlines by memory, bird flight, currents, stars, and the smell of land after rain. They hugged shorelines when they could, crossed open water when they had to, and learned that the sea, terrifying as it was, could also join what mountains and deserts divided. A harbour was not an ending. It was a doorway. Eastward, the Mediterranean stretched like a chain of shimmering chambers. There were the coasts of Greece, broken into bays and islands where hills dropped sharply into blue water. There were the rich plains of Anatolia, the cedar lands of the Levant, the Nile Delta opening like a green fan into Egypt, and the old cities of North Africa facing the sun. Every shore had its own language, its own gods, its own measures of grain and bronze, its own way of reading the sky. A merchant leaving the far west could pass through worlds within weeks. He might hear Iberian speech beside a copper ingot, Libyan words beside a camel load of salt, Egyptian prayers beside linen and gold, and Aegean songs beside painted jars of wine. The ancient sea was a place of exchange, but also of suspicion. A friendly harbour one season could become a hostile shore the next. Trade and fear travelled together. Beyond the strait, the scale changed. The Atlantic did not behave like the Mediterranean. It breathed in greater lungs. Its tides rose and fell with a power that astonished people from smaller seas. Its waves carried the memory of far storms. Along its eastern edges, currents slid past cliffs, marshes, estuaries, and sandy islands. The coasts of Morocco, Portugal, Spain, and farther north into misty lands were not empty margins. They were corridors of fish, metal, amber, skins, salt, and rumour. Somewhere in this wider water, ancient imagination placed a great island, not merely a rock in the sea, not a lonely fishing place, a land broad enough for plains, mountains, rivers, cities, armies, fields, and royal roads. A place said to be larger than any island known to Greek listeners, lying before other islands, and beyond them a vast continent encircling the true ocean. It was a geography that sounded dreamlike, yet it spoke to a real anxiety. How much of the world lay beyond sight? The answer was always more than anyone knew. If a ship sailed from Egypt toward the west, it left behind one of the most ordered landscapes on earth. The Nile carried black soil through the desert and made a ribbon of life under a blazing sky. Temples rose at river bends, granaries filled, scribes pressed signs into tablets or brushed ink across papyrus. Egypt measured time through floods, stars, kings, and tombs. Its people understood the power of water, but their water returned in a rhythm that could be watched and predicted. Atlantis, in the old telling, belonged to another rhythm, oceanic, remote, surrounded, fed by the sea and threatened by it. Between Egypt and the Atlantic stood the full breadth of the Mediterranean world. Ships had to cross past Cyprus, Crete, Sicily, Sardinia, and the Balearic Islands, each one a stepping stone, refuge, fortress, or prize. Crete had palaces with painted walls and storerooms heavy with oil. Sicily watched the central crossings. Sardinia held stone towers and metal-rich uplands. The Balearics guarded western approaches. No traveller moved through this region without encountering power. Power sat in harbours. It sat where fresh water flowed near a sheltered bay. It sat where high ground overlooked an anchorage. It sat where farmers could feed shipwrights, sailors, guards, priests, and clerks. A maritime kingdom needed more than ships. It needed timber from hills, rope from fibre, pitch for seams, bronze for tools, grain for crews, and skilled hands to repair what storms destroyed. The sea rewarded ambition, but it punished disorder. Imagine, then, an island kingdom strong enough to shape routes instead of merely using them. Its ships would not drift from port to port as beggars of weather. They would move with purpose. They would carry envoys, tribute, soldiers, craftsmen, musicians, sacred animals, and sealed messages. Their arrival would be noticed long before they reached the dock. Watchmen on headlands would see the sails first, small pale triangles against the morning light, and someone would run to tell the harbour master. Across vast plains inland, farmers might never see the ocean, yet their lives would still bend toward it. Grain measured in village yards could be loaded onto wagons, drawn toward river mouths, stored in warehouses, and shipped to feed strangers across the water. Miners in dark hills could strike copper from stone, never seeing the palaces where bronze gleamed in ceremonial axes. Shepherds could shear wool that became dyed cloth worn by nobles in a city they would know only by name. That is how wide power becomes. It touches people who cannot see its centre. The imagined Atlantis stood not as a single city alone, but as a system. Around it lay smaller settlements, fields, canals, quarries, orchards, ports, shrines, and watch stations. Inland roads would have crossed cultivated lowlands. Mountain paths would have led to timber and ore. River valleys would have carried goods down from the interior. The capital, with its rings of water and stone, would have seemed like the heart. But no heart survives without veins. Far beyond its shores, other peoples would have judged it differently. Some would call it wealthy. Some would call it dangerous. Some would trade with it by day and curse it by night. A fisherman on a poor coast might see Atlantean ships as miracles of order. A rival king might see them as shadows on the horizon. An Egyptian priest might preserve the memory as a warning. A Greek listener might hear it as both history and moral riddle. Distance changes truth. A city seen by its own people is made of meals, births, debts, festivals, arguments, repairs, and smoke from morning fires. A city seen from across the sea becomes larger than life. Its towers grow taller in the telling. Its armies become countless. Its wealth becomes impossible. Its fall, if it falls, becomes a sign that even the proudest places are only temporary guests on the earth. At night, along the western coasts, fires would have burned on promontories. Some guided ships, some warned villages, some marked sacred places where people left offerings to the powers of sea and sky. Above those flames, the stars wheeled slowly, familiar to pilots and priests alike. The same constellations looked down on Egypt, Greece, Iberia, Libya, and the cold waters beyond the strait. All these regions were connected by fragile lines of wood, sail, memory, and need. So the world of Atlantis, whether read as legend, memory, philosophy, or echo of some lost disaster, must be imagined at full scale. Not as a single drowned palace beneath blue water, but as a vast web of coasts and crossings, rivers and mountains, farmers and kings, storms and ambitions, a world where geography itself was destiny, where distance inspired wonder, and where the sea could make a civilization powerful enough to be remembered long after its shores vanished from sight. The mystery of Atlantis begins not with ruins, but with questions. Who were they? Where did they come from? How did they rise? Why did their world change? What did they leave behind? These questions move quietly beneath the story like currents under dark water. They are simple enough for a child to ask, yet wide enough to trouble philosophers, archaeologists, sailors, poets, and kings. Atlantis is not only a place that may have been lost, it is an idea standing at the edge of memory, asking how much of human history has slipped beneath mud, sea, silence, and time. The first question is the most human. Who were they? Not the shining figures of later imagination, not perfect beings clothed in silver and wisdom, not monsters of pride drawn only to be punished, but people. They would have woken before sunrise. They would have mended nets, counted jars, argued over inheritance, carried water, feared illness, honoured ancestors, and watched children grow beside harbours filled with gulls. Whatever greatness later gathered around their name, it must have rested on ordinary lives. A civilization is never built by rulers alone. It is built by hands that lay stone, hands that grind grain, hands that hold oars through cold dawn water. It is built by women who remember kinship lines, by scribes who keep accounts, by farmers who rid soil, by potters who learn the exact pressure of thumb against clay. If Atlantis existed as more than a moral tale, then its people were not shadows. They were bodies in weather, voices in houses, mourners beside graves, and workers under the sun. Yet another question rises behind the first. Where did they come from? Island peoples rarely appear from nowhere. They grow from movements older than their own names. Some ancestors may have crossed from nearby coasts in hide boats, reed craft, or wooden vessels sewn and pegged with skill. Others may have followed fish, copper, obsidian, salt, or stories of fertile land. Generations may have mixed until no one remembered a single beginning. Origins are often woven, not straight. A people can carry mountain customs to the shore. They can bring inland gods to coastal shrines. They can borrow boat designs from one neighbour, burial customs from another, and words from traders who never stay long enough to belong. Over time, such borrowings become identity. The foreign becomes familiar. The inherited becomes sacred. The island begins to speak with its own voice. But how did they rise? No civilization becomes powerful by beauty alone. A beautiful harbour may attract ships, but it cannot command them without organisation. Fertile plains may feed towns, but grain must be measured, stored, defended, and moved. Metal may enrich a kingdom, but ore in the mountain is only stone until miners, smelters, charcoal burners, traders, guards, and rulers are joined in purpose. Rise requires pattern. Rise requires pressure. Perhaps Atlantis rose because it stood between worlds. The sea gave it danger, but also reach. Ships could cross where armies could not march. A ruler who controlled safe harbours, skilled shipyards, and the knowledge of winds could touch many coasts without possessing every mile between them. Tribute could arrive in jars and ingots. News could arrive faster than horsemen. Influence could travel quietly, wrapped in trade. Still, wealth alone does not explain endurance. A society must persuade its people that order is worth obeying. Some obey because they fear punishment. Some obey because temples teach that law is divine. Some obey because grain rations, festivals, protection, and honour flow from the centre. A powerful island kingdom would need stories about itself. It would need ceremonies that made hierarchy feel natural. It would need children to learn that the city, the king, the gods, and the sea belong to one design. That design may have seemed unbreakable, yet all designs carry strain. The question of change waits patiently inside every golden age. Why did their world change? No civilization remains the same when its ships multiply, when its borders widen, when its rulers inherit wealth they did not earn, when conquered peoples bow without loyalty, or when the young no longer remember the fear that shaped their ancestors. Prosperity can soften discipline. Victory can feed appetite. Monuments can hide anxiety. There are other forces too. The earth can move, rivers can silt, harbours can choke, forests can vanish under the axes of shipbuilders, farmlands can tire, rain can fail for seasons, or fall too heavily in the wrong month. Trade routes can shift when rival ports grow stronger. A kingdom built on water must always negotiate with uncertainty. A storm is not political, but it can destroy a fleet. An earthquake has no ideology, but it can end a dynasty. And there is the sea itself. For coastal peoples, the sea is never one thing. It feeds and takes. It carries merchants and raiders. It reflects sunrise with tenderness and then breaks ships against hidden stone. It gives fish, salt, shell, coral, and distance. It also gives graves without markers. To build a civilization near the sea is to make a pact with a power that cannot be crowned, bribed, imprisoned, or fully understood. Perhaps that is why the story endures. Atlantis speaks to the fear that human order is temporary. It imagines roads, laws, temples, fleets, palaces, and markets, then places them under a sky where everything can change. The question is not only whether a great island sank. The deeper question is how people remember loss. When a city falls, the survivors carry fragments, a name, a royal line, a flood, a warning, a map no one can verify, a tale told beside another fire, in another language, to listeners who lean closer. What did they leave behind? Maybe no single object will ever answer. Not one statue rising from the seabed with a name carved clearly across its base. Not one palace waiting intact beneath clear water. The past is seldom so generous. It leaves shards, patterns, myths, disturbed layers, drowned landscapes, strange similarities, and silences. Sometimes it leaves a story so persistent that even disbelief cannot quite dismiss it. A story can be a ruin of memory. This does not mean every detail is true. Memory magnifies. Priests arrange. Philosophers reshape. Travellers misunderstand. Numbers grow in the telling. A local disaster becomes universal. A defeated enemy becomes impossibly rich. A moral lesson borrows the clothing of history. But legends often fasten themselves to something. A volcanic eruption, a destroyed harbour, a people displaced by water, a city remembered by those who never saw it. Between fact and invention lies a dim country. Atlantis lives there, half illuminated. If approached too harshly, it dissolves into allegory. If accepted too easily, it becomes fantasy. The careful mind must walk slowly. It must ask without forcing answers. It must notice that ancient people could preserve astonishing memories, yet also shape those memories for meaning. It must allow wonder without surrendering judgment. And so the questions remain alive. Who were they? If they were real enough to cast a shadow through story, where did they come from? If their roots reached into migrations, islands, and forgotten shores, how did they rise? If their power depended on ships, metals, laws, and belief, why did their world change? If pride, nature, politics, and the sea worked together against them, what did they leave behind? If their greatest monument is not stone, but the unease we feel when we imagine a whole civilization gone silent. In that unease, Atlantis continues to breathe. To understand the deepest roots of Atlantis, we must go beneath the names, beneath the palaces, beneath the bright inventions of kings, and listen to the island itself. Long before any harbour was cut into stone, there was land shaped by pressure, fire, water, and time. An island does not begin as a kingdom. It begins as rock lifted from the sea, as cooled lava, as folded seabed, as cliffs bitten by wind, as valleys where rain gathers in silence. The first story belongs not to people, but to geology. Mountains rise without witnesses. Shores crumble without memory. Springs find their way through darkness. In such a place, Every human life would have been guided by the land's hidden moods. Perhaps the island stood in a restless part of the ocean, where the earth's crust shifted under deep water and old faults slept uneasily beneath the hills. Earthquakes may have come as sudden visitors, rattling pottery, cracking walls, and sending goats scrambling from the slopes. Hot springs may have steamed near sacred ground. Strange vapours may have risen from fissures after rain. To early people, the island would not have seemed dead beneath their feet. It would have seemed alive. The sea around it would have been equally powerful. In calm seasons, it offered fish, shellfish, salt, seaweed, and shining routes toward other lands. In darker months, it threw storms against the cliffs, broke boats on reefs, and carried away those who misjudged its temper. Children would have learned early that the sea had many faces. One face glittered at morning, another roared at night, another waited quietly beyond the rocks, concealing depth. The first people who came to such shores may have arrived with little more than memory and need. They might have crossed from a nearby coast in small boats, following birds or smoke, or driven by hunger, conflict, drought, curiosity, or the slow courage of family seeking new ground. Their first landing would not have looked heroic. It would have been wet sandals on stones, frightened animals in baskets, bundles of seed, tools wrapped in hides, and eyes scanning the unfamiliar slopes. A new island asks hard questions. Where is fresh water which plants can be eaten? Which coves are safe when winds turn? Where do fish gather? Which cliffs fall without warning? Where can the dead be buried without the sea uncovering them? These are not questions for scholars at a distance. They are questions of dawn and hunger. A wrong answer can end a family line. Over generations, the answers became tradition. A spring beside a fig tree, a sheltered beach where boats could be dragged above the tide, a hill where smoke could be seen from far away, a cave where bones of ancestors rested dry and cool. Paths formed between these places because feet returned again and again. Knowledge hardened into custom. Custom slowly became identity. Climate would have shaped everything. In warmer, wetter centuries, the island may have carried forests on its higher slopes, with oak, pine, laurel, or cedar-like trees giving timber for boats and beams. Streams might have run full through valleys, feeding marshes where birds nested and reeds grew tall. Fields near the coast could have held barley, wheat, beans, vines, and olives, depending on the island's latitude and soil. Prosperity begins humbly, with enough rain at the right time, but climate is not a loyal servant. A few dry years could shrink streams and turn good fields pale. Too much rain could wash terraces down hillsides. Storm surges could salt low farmland. A slight cooling might change harvests. A season of unusual winds could keep fishing boats ashore until stores ran thin. Early island communities learned that survival meant reading signs, cloud shapes, bird movement, insect rhythms, the taste of wells, the colour of leaves. The world spoke softly before it struck. Mountains gave protection, but also separation. Villages on the opposite sides of a ridge might develop different habits, accents, loyalties, and gods. A valley people might honour a spring spirit. A coastal people might leave offerings to the sea. Hill herders might know pastures and stars better than tides. Even on one island, many small worlds could live side by side, watching one another across distance. Then the sea joined them. A boat makes neighbours out of strangers, a canoe drawn from a hollowed trunk, a hide vessel stretched over a frame, or a plank boat stitched with fibre can change the meaning of geography. Coves become meeting places. Fishers become messengers. Shell ornaments travel inland. Stone tools from one valley appear in another. A marriage joins two families from separate shores. A rumour crosses water faster than a shepherd can cross a mountain. The earliest migrations may have come in waves, not armies. A family here, a clan there. A few skilled navigators bringing new pottery shapes. A group of farmers with better seeds. a metal worker who knew how to coax copper from green-stained stone, a ritual specialist who carried songs from another coast. No single arrival would have created Atlantis. Many arrivals, layered over time, could have created the human soil from which it grew. The island's position mattered. If it lay near crossing routes, it would hear the world before inland kingdoms did. Foreign beads would wash into local graves, unfamiliar blades would appear in chiefs' houses, new animals, crops, and ornaments would arrive with stories attached. If it lay farther out in the ocean, isolation would deepen its character. Its people would become more self-reliant, more attentive to weather, perhaps more reverent toward any ship appearing from the horizon. Both isolation and contact can make a people strong. Isolation teaches discipline, memory, and adaptation. Contact teaches comparison, imitation, ambition, and desire. The most dangerous brilliance may come when both are present together, when a people knows enough loneliness to become distinct, and enough exchange to become powerful. An island can dream inward and outward at the same time. It can guard its sacred hills while sending boats toward every distant light. The land may also have offered metals, copper in the rocks, tin through trade, gold in river sands, iron not yet mastered, or only known as rare dark stone. Metals transform societies because they transform work. A sharper blade cuts timber faster. A stronger adze shapes planks more cleanly. A bright ornament marks status. A weapon changes courage into threat. Beneath every shining object lies a chain of labour. Woodcutters, miners, smelters, carriers, and watchers. Still, the first wealth was not metal, it was food. Fields had to be cleared, terraces built, seed selected, herds protected from cliffs, wolves, thieves, and drought. Fishing grounds remembered, shell beds managed, salt gathered from pans, fruit trees tended across lifetimes. An island people able to feed itself could grow in number. More people meant more hands, more boats, more disputes, more ceremonies, and more need for rules. The landscape was quietly teaching organisation. At the edge of every settlement stood uncertainty, a tremor at night, a storm beyond the headland, a child with fever, a strange sail near sunset, a spring that failed, a hillside that gave way after rain. These pressures did not merely frighten early communities, they trained them. They made memory valuable. They gave authority to elders who remembered disasters. They gave power to those who could predict seasons, heal wounds, build boats, store grain, or speak to unseen forces. Thus, before Atlantis could become a wonder, it had to become a homeland. Its earliest people learned the smell of rain on hot stone, the safest paths through thorn scrub, the deep pools where fish gathered, the cave winds that warned of weather, the stars that rose before planting, and the low sounds that sometimes came from under the earth. They learned where life was generous. They learned where it was cruel. Slowly, the island entered their bones, and in that long, quiet apprenticeship between people and place, the first shape of Atlantis began. At dawn, smoke rises from the first villages in thin blue threads. The houses are low and close to the ground, built from stone footings, timber posts, reeds, mud plaster, and roofs weighted against the wind. They gather near springs, coves, and fields, not in grandeur, but in practical intimacy. A path of pressed earth runs between them. Chickens scratch near a wall. A child carries a small basket of shells. Someone is already grinding grain, and the slow rasp of stone against stone becomes one of the morning's first sounds. This is where a civilization begins to breathe. Inside the houses, life is crowded with objects shaped by hand. Clay jars stand against walls, some filled with barley, others with dried fish, oil, beans, salt, or water drawn before sunrise. Baskets hang from beams to keep food away from mice. A loom leans in the dimness. Sleeping mats are rolled aside. A hearth glows with last night's embers, and a woman kneels to wake the fire with straw, breath, and patience. Outside, the village turns toward its work. Men and women move through the same morning light with tasks known so well they need no command. Some walk to fields where low terraces hold the soil against the slope. They carry wooden hoes, stone blades, seed bags, and the quiet hope that the season will be kind. Others go down to the beach where boats rest above the tide line, their hulls patched with resin and fibre. The sea is grey, almost gentle, but no one trusts it fully. Before a boat is pushed into the water, there are small rituals. A hand touches the prow. A few drops of oil fall into the surf. A whispered name is given to the wind. These gestures are not decoration. They are a way of admitting that skill is never enough. A fisherman may know every reef, every current, and every sign of changing weather, yet still vanish before noon. The island teaches humility to those who eat from the sea. In the fields, the work is slower and more patient. Barley bends under dew. Goats pull at dry shrubs on the hillside. Pigs root near the edge of settlement, watched by children with sticks and loud voices. Vines climb rough supports. Fruit trees are protected as treasures, because a tree is a promise made to the future. To plant one is to believe that someone will remain long enough to harvest its shade and sweetness. Food binds the village more tightly than any wall. At midday, people gather in patches of shade. Bread is broken, fish is roasted over coals, olives, onions, lentils, cheese, and rough wine may pass from hand to hand. Meals are not only nourishment, they are memory, alliance, gratitude, and rank. The best portion may go to an elder, a guest, a priestly figure, or the head of a household. Even in simplicity, order is visible. Children watch everything. They learn which aunt knows the healing plants, which uncle can mend a net with the fewest knots, which grandmother remembers the year when the sea covered the lower fields, which elder speaks to the dead during winter rites. They learn the names of winds before they learn formal prayers. They learn that certain caves are not for play, that some stones must not be moved, and that a person's shadow near a burial place should be treated carefully after sunset. The dead remain near the living. Some are buried beneath house floors, close enough to hear footsteps. Others rest in stone chambers, caves, or mounded graves facing the sea. Their bodies may be curled as if sleeping, accompanied by beads, tools, bowls, shells, blades, pigments, or food for a journey no living person has seen. A child's grave may contain a small carved animal. A warrior's grave may hold a weapon polished beyond ordinary use. A mother's grave may hold ornaments worn smooth by skin. These burials are quiet documents. They tell of grief, status, affection, and belief. They suggest that death did not erase belonging. The ancestors watched. They guarded fields. They heard oaths. They might bring fertility or misfortune, depending on how carefully they were honoured. At night, when lamps flickered inside houses and wind moved around the walls, the presence of the dead may have felt close, not frightening exactly, but powerful. Ritual life gathers around thresholds. The threshold between house and open air, between land and sea, between childhood and adulthood, between planting and harvest, between the living and the dead. People mark these crossings with song, food, paint, fire, water, and sacrifice. A young person may receive a new name after proving skill in the hunt, field, boat, or weaving house. A bride may cross into another family with gifts of cloth, jars, animals, and memory. A newborn may be shown to the dawn. The gods are still near the earth. They are not yet distant figures locked in formal temples of polished stone. They live in springs, storms, bulls, birds, caves, trees, mountains, and the glittering line where the sun sinks into the water. A black cloud may be a warning. A sudden shoal of fish may be a blessing. A double birth among goats may require interpretation. The world is full of signs, but signs must be read by those trusted to read them. Among the most valued people may be the makers. A potter sits near a turning slab, hands steady, shaping wet clay into storage jars, bowls, lamps, and vessels for the dead. Each mark pressed into a rim means something: a family pattern, a village habit, a symbol of ownership, or a charm against breaking. Nearby, a carpenter shapes planks with a polished adze. A weaver moves her fingers through thread. A shell worker drills tiny holes in beads that will travel far beyond the beach where they were gathered. Trade begins in modest things: a basket of dried fish for a bundle of wool, salt for grain, obsidian for hides, a copper awl for jars of oil. At first, exchange may happen between families who know each other's grandparents, then between villages across a ridge, then across water. A boat returns with unfamiliar pottery, bright stones, foreign seeds, and news of people whose speech sounds like waves over pebbles. Curiosity enters the village disguised as merchandise. With trade comes comparison. A local chief sees a finer blade than his own. A potter studies a foreign pattern. A young sailor brings back a song from another island. A healer learns of a plant that grows beyond the northern hills. The village is still itself, yet it has begun to widen. Every imported object asks a dangerous question: why do they have what we do not? Every answer can become desire. Still, most days remain ordinary. A roof leaks, a goat escapes, a baby cries through the night, a jar cracks near the fire. Two brothers argue over a boundary stone, a girl laughs while carrying water and spills half of it on the path. These details vanish from grand stories, yet they are the true fabric of the past. Without them, kings would have no people to rule, temples no offerings to receive, and harbours no hands to load their ships. Evening comes softly. The boats return through bronze-coloured light. Fish are counted, nets are hung. The smell of cooking spreads through the settlement. Elders sit near doorways, their faces lined by wind and years, watching children chase one another between the walls. From a nearby burial place, stones glow faintly in the last sun. From the sea, a cool breath enters the village. For a while, the world seems small enough to understand. Yet within these houses, fields, graves, tools, meals, and whispered prayers, something larger is forming. Shared labour becomes custom. Custom becomes law in all but name. Memory becomes authority. Exchange becomes ambition. The village, without knowing it, is learning how to become more than a village. At first, authority has no palace. It sits on a woven mat beneath a fig tree, where several elders listen while two farmers argue over a strip of watered ground. It stands at the beach when a boat returns. Damaged and frightened men disagree about who should receive the remaining catch. It moves through a crowded house after a death, when relatives must divide tools, animals, jars, and obligations. Power begins in moments of uncertainty, when people need a decision that others will accept. On an island of scattered communities, every village carries its own memory. One family remembers an old claim to a spring, another guards the best landing cove. A hill settlement knows where timber may be cut without exhausting the slope. Coastal households understand when shoals will come close to shore. Such knowledge brings respect, but it also brings rivalry. As populations grow and exchanges multiply, disputes are no longer simple quarrels between neighbours. They begin to affect whole settlements. The first leaders are likely not kings. They are mediators, organisers, speakers, ritual keepers, and providers of protection. An elder whose judgment has ended feuds may gather followers. A successful sea captain may command attention because he brings home rare goods and knows foreign waters. A woman from a powerful lineage may join households through marriages and gifts. A keeper of ceremonies may speak with the authority of ancestors and gods. Slowly, leadership begins to last beyond a single crisis. A household with larger storerooms can feed labourers in a poor season. A family owning strong boats can carry more cargo and more warriors. A lineage associated with sacred rites may claim that its privileges were not given by people, but by powers beneath the earth and beyond the horizon. Wealth, gratitude, fear, and belief become threads twisted together. Once tied, they are difficult to separate. Near a reliable harbour, a larger settlement rises. Its houses no longer stand merely where convenience allows. They gather around open spaces where goods can be weighed, animals traded, disputes heard, and offerings presented. Low walls mark storehouses larger than any family requires. Fresh plaster covers the residence of an important household. A raised platform stands near the centre, perhaps used for speeches, sacrifices, judgments, or the formal receiving of visitors from other shores. The architecture speaks quietly. A broad doorway announces welcome and status. A courtyard large enough for feasting shows that its owner can gather many dependents. A row of sealed jars implies surplus, and surplus implies control. Behind thick doors rest grain, oil, dried meat, woven cloth, metal tools, pigments, and goods received from distant ports. A person who commands stored food commands choices during hunger, and choices made during hunger can change a society forever. When harvests are good, grain is set aside. At first, villagers may give willingly. A portion stored together can feed crews repairing a breakwater, workers clearing irrigation channels, or families struck by sickness. It can support a communal feast honouring the gods. It can sustain watchers on a headland who warn of approaching sails. Contribution becomes sensible because its benefits are visible. The jar given today may return as bread during a dry season, but stores invite counting. Someone must know which household delivered barley and oil, wools, fish, livestock, or labour. Marks are scratched on clay, wood, bone, ceilings, or painted tags. Tokens represent jars, goats, baskets, measures, and days of work. Administration does not arrive with thunder. It enters quietly, as a solution to confusion. Yet once everything can be counted, those who keep the count acquire a new kind of power. A person can resist an insult, it is harder to resist a record. The sacred world also grows more ordered. Small offerings once left beside springs and rocks now gather at central shrines. Stones are dressed more carefully. Roofed sanctuaries shelter objects believed to carry divine presence. Ceremonies become larger, timed to planting, harvest, safe sailing, rainfall, marriage alliances, and victory over enemies. Priests or priestesses learn chants, gestures, purifications, calendars, and the proper handling of offerings. Fire rises from altars at dusk. The smell of roasted meat drifts over a gathered crowd. Cups of wine or grain drink are poured onto stone. Musicians strike drums or shake rattles, while dancers move in circles that echo the turning seasons. A bull may be led forward, its horns polished, its strength admired and feared. The animal embodies fertility, force, and danger held under human hands. Its sacrifice tells the community that order has a price. A leader who stands beside the altar becomes more than a wealthy person. He may claim to protect the people because the gods favour his house. She may preside over rights because her ancestry reaches back to the first settlers or to a sacred marriage between sea and land. Authority is wrapped in ceremony, made visible through clothing, ornaments, staffs, seats, attendants, and the silence demanded when important words are spoken. Obedience becomes not only practical, but sacred. Still, no society accepts rising power without tension. A distant hamlet may resent sending grain to a harbour settlement that seems already rich. A fisherman may ask why his sons must repair walls instead of putting to sea. A herding family may hide animals when collectors approach. A rival lineage may insist that old customs are being stolen and remade for another household's glory. Every new institution promises safety to some and burden to others. The answer to resistance is often protection. Watch posts rise on ridges overlooking the sea. Beacons are arranged so a warning flame can leap from headland to headland. Palisades enclose valuable storehouses. Stone walls thicken around the central settlement. Gates narrow the roads into places where strangers can be questioned and goods inspected. Men train with spear, sling, shield, and bow, not merely for hunting or revenge, but as an organised body under command. Warriors change the village atmosphere. They carry weapons fashioned with greater care than farm tools. They wear belts, badges, feathers, painted shields, bronze points, or necklaces that distinguish them from other men. They may receive larger food shares, captured goods, or land near the centre. Their loyalty belongs partly to kin, partly to the leader who rewards them. A boat crew of armed men can guard merchants, punish raiders, collect tribute, or become raiders themselves. Beyond the walls, labour shapes water and stone. Canals are cleared and widened to bring small craft closer to storage yards. Embankments hold fields against flooding. Quays are laid along protected inlets. Roads of packed earth link orchards, terraces, grazing grounds, quarries, shrines, and harbour gates. Such projects demand more hands than a family can offer, and more planning than a village argument can provide. Whoever organises them can point to the results and say, "This order feeds you." Laws begin as remembered decisions. A boundary stone may not be moved. A debt may require repayment in grain after harvest. A boat lost through negligence may be compensated by labour. A killer may face exile, payment, vengeance, or sacred cleansing. Marriage gifts, inheritance, theft, water rights, ship ownership, and burial privileges all need judgment. Some rulings are repeated so often that no one remembers their first occasion. Custom hardens into rule. Then rule acquires witnesses, symbols, and penalties. In a public square, before elders, warriors, priests, and gathered households, an oath is sworn over water, flame, or a sacred object. The accused stands exposed to the eyes of the community. The leader hears the claim, listens to testimony, and delivers judgment. Justice is rarely equal, but it is visible. Visibility matters. People may endure strict authority more readily when they believe disorder would be worse. By sunset, the central settlement looks different from the villages that nourished it. Smoke rises from workshops where metal is heated and hammered. Guards pass near storeroom doors. Offerings glimmer in a shrine. Labourers return from canal banks with mud on their legs. A clerk-like keeper presses a mark into damp clay. At a raised house, guests receive food from vessels finer than those used in ordinary homes. The island is no longer only a gathering of families. It has learned to store, command, measure, punish, defend, and worship on a larger scale. Its people have raised institutions from necessities, and necessities have begun to wear the face of authority. In the evening silence, walls stand newly finished above the harbour, reflecting a faint red light from the last of the sun. Inside them rest grain, metal, sacred power, and the first weight of rule. In the high house above the inner harbour, a child is born during a season of strange weather. For 7 days, mist has lain over the water. Fishermen return early. Speaking of currents that twist against their oars, birds circle inland instead of following the shoals. On the night of the birth, rain strikes the roof in sudden sheets, then stops so completely that those gathered around the labouring mother can hear drops falling from the eaves into a stone basin. The child draws breath, and somewhere in the darkness a bull bellows. His mother belongs to an old coastal lineage, keepers of a shrine where fresh water rises from beneath black rock. His father is remembered as a sea lord, a man who commanded swift boats and died far from home, either in battle or in a storm. For stories seldom agree when grief has turned into legend. The child is called Atlas, a name heavy with strength, endurance, and the expectation of burdens not yet visible. He grows in a world of competing houses. From the terraces above the harbour he sees sails entering from distant coves, each marked with the colours of a different clan. Their leaders bring gifts and grievances. One demands access to a spring. Another accuses neighbours of stealing timber. Another arrives with armed companions, smiling through a feast while measuring the thickness of the walls. The island is fertile, skilled, and increasingly wealthy. Yet it remains divided by pride. Atlas learns early that power is not loudest in the moment of command. It is present in who sits closest to the sacred fire. It appears in which guest receives the larger cup, whose seal closes the grain room, which young warriors rise when one name is spoken. He watches his mother greet rivals without lowering her eyes. He watches elder priests pause before answering questions, allowing silence to make their words seem heavier. He watches captains touch maps with scarred fingers, tracing routes across water they know can kill them. As a boy, he's sent among ordinary households rather than hidden behind ceremonial walls. He learns to row in narrow boats, to guide a mule along rocky paths, to cut vines without harming the next season's fruit. He sleeps one winter in a shepherd's settlement high above the sea, where nights are cold and the stars seem close enough to disturb. There he hears complaints that never reach the harbour halls. Collectors take too much grain. Guards protect wealthy warehouses first. Sacred festivals grow grander while poor roofs collapse in rain. The boy listens. Years later, people will remember this as wisdom. Perhaps it is only loneliness. A child raised among expectations must search for places where nobody bows. Among fishers, farmers, herders, and craftsmen. Atlas discovers that an island cannot be held together by bronze gates alone. People obey longest when they believe the centre remembers their hunger. By early manhood, he is tall, measured in speech, and difficult to read. He wears no excess gold during public gatherings. He keeps a simple knife at his belt, its handle worn from actual use. In contests of strength, he is capable but not reckless. In ritual, he stands with grave attention. Some admire him. Others mistrust his quietness. A loud rival can be judged quickly. A silent one leaves room for fear. The crisis comes with a dry year. Springs in the western villages sink lower than living memory. Grain heads form small and brittle. Goats wander farther for grass. At the same time, foreign merchants arrive seeking metal and timber, carrying fine cloth, bright weapons, and promises of profitable exchange. Harbour leaders wish to sell what stores remain, arguing that trade will secure alliances. Inland families refuse. Men begin carrying spears to meetings once attended with baskets and staffs. One afternoon, a convoy of grain is stopped on a narrow road between stone walls. No one knows who cast the first stone. A guard falls. A farmer is stabbed. Within moments, the road becomes a place of blood, shattered jars, scattered barley, and voices calling family names. News travels across the island before sunset. By morning, boats are being prepared not for fishing but for raids along neighbouring shores. Atlas is summoned to the shrine of the spring. Within its dim chamber, water still gathers drop by drop into a carved basin. Elders, priests, captains, and heads of households sit in a tense circle. Each speaks of injury. Each insists that yielding would invite destruction. Atlas hears them until torch flames burn low. Then he rises, takes a cup from beside the basin, fills it with the little water the shrine can offer, and pours it onto the stone floor. The sound is small, everyone hears it. He tells them that the island is emptying itself in the same way, not by drought alone, but by hands spilling what cannot easily be restored. A spring divided into private jars will save no village. Grain guarded by corpses will feed no children. Ships burned in revenge will bring no cargo home. His words do not end hatred. Words rarely do. But they give frightened people a path that does not require immediate war. Atlas proposes a binding settlement. The remaining grain stores will be opened under shared supervision. Coastal houses will surrender part of their reserves. Inland communities will send labour to deepen wells and repair channels. Timber sales will be limited until rains return. Armed escorts will answer to a council gathered at the central harbour, and any household that attacks a convoy will lose its claim to common aid. The shrine will witness the agreement. The sacred water will belong to the island, not to one lineage. Some call it humiliation, some call it necessity. a powerful sea captain named Arian refuses the terms. His ships control 2 northern coves, and he believes hunger will cause smaller villages to rally around his weapons. He leaves the shrine before the oaths are spoken. Within days, his men seize a storehouse and declare that Atlas has made himself servant of the weak. The island pauses between settlement and civil war. Atlas does not charge north with an army. He sends messengers first, not to Arian, but to the families under his rule. They carry sacks of grain stamped with the shrine seal. They promise safe water rights and protection to any village that sets down weapons. At night, 2 of Arian's boat crews slip away and enter the central harbour. Then a third comes. The sea captain awakens to find that power built on fear has become very quiet around him. When Atlas finally sails north, the wind is mild. His boats enter the cove without flaming arrows or war cries. Arian stands on the quay in bronze armour, surrounded by too few men. He expects execution. Instead, Atlas strips him of command and sends him into exile on a merchant vessel, alive but nameless among foreign shores. Mercy wins more loyalty than a severed head could have done. By sunset, the northern storehouse is opened, and grain is measured beneath watchful eyes. The island now sees Atlas differently. He has not conquered a foreign land. He has done something more difficult. He has made rival households accept one judgment, one measure, one protection, one sacred centre. At a gathering held when the rains finally return, the people place a circlet upon his head, not an extravagant crown, but a band of dark metal set with a single blue stone. Priests anoint his hands with oil and sea water. Captains lower their staffs. Farmers raise bowls of new grain. He is named king. Under his direction, the central harbour is redrawn as a sacred image of order. Watercourses are shaped in circles round the rising seat of rule. Bridges are measured. Landing places are marked. The shrine water is brought into ceremony beside salt water from the sea, joining inland life with outward power. The design is practical, yet it is also a message many shores, many families, many currents, all turning around one protected heart. At dusk, Atlas walks alone beside the newly cut channel. Rainwater darkens the soil. Workmen have gone home. The unfinished banks are still rough, without polished facades or towering statues. He kneels and places his hand into the slow-moving water. It is cool, carrying fragments of earth toward the harbour. A kingdom has begun, not in triumph, but in the difficult promise that order can hold where hunger and rivalry once threatened to tear everything apart. Morning enters the harbour with the smell of charcoal, tar, and heated metal. Along the quays, shipwrights bend over newly laid keels. Mallets strike wooden pegs into fitted planks. Ropes hang in coils beside heaps of sailcloth. Boys run carrying bowls of pitch warmed over coals, while older craftsmen press dark resin into seams with fingers hardened by years of salt and splinters. Near the waterline, bronze tools flash in the sun, sharper and more numerous than anything once kept in a village storehouse. The harbour is becoming a forge of movement. Atlas stands on a stone platform overlooking the basin as 3 foreign vessels approach under cautious sail. Their hulls are broad, their cargo heavy. One carries copper from red hills beyond the sea, another brings tin in small guarded ingots, dull in appearance yet precious beyond its size. The third holds timber cut from distant forests, long straight trunks suitable for masts and oars. These ships do not come merely to exchange gifts. They come because the island now promises safe docking, fixed measures, guarded warehouses, and judgment when bargains fail. A secure harbour can summon wealth from far away. At the weighing yard, officials place metal on balanced scales. Clay seals are pressed into damp tags. Scribes mark quantities with symbols understood by merchants and storekeepers. The old habit of trusting a man's spoken oath has not vanished, but it now stands beside something colder and more lasting. A counted cargo can be taxed. A sealed jar can be claimed. A disputed measure can be judged before witnesses. Near the furnaces, charcoal fires burn through the afternoon. Copper melts in glowing crucibles. Tin is added in careful portions. Workers shield their faces from the heat as liquid bronze pours into moulds for axes, chisels, spearheads, rivets, knives, and ornaments. The metal cools with a reddish-gold sheen, beautiful enough for ceremony and hard enough for violence. A sharper adze means a ship can be built more quickly. A stronger spear means a crew landing on an unfriendly shore carries more than confidence. Metal does not choose its purpose. People do. At first, the new vessels serve trade. Their hulls carry amphorae of oil, baskets of dried figs, dyed wool, carved stone bowls, salt fish, and worked bronze. They sail to neighbouring islands and sheltered mainland bays, returning with grain, hides, ivory, timber, ore, and news. Every successful voyage draws more young men toward the docks. To row beneath an island banner is no longer only labour. It is an opening into wealth, status, and stories told beside crowded fires. The ships grow longer. Their prows rise higher above the water. More benches are fitted for oarsmen. Storage space is reduced in certain craft to make room for speed, shields, spare spears, and archers. Captains practice signals with flags and horn calls. Crews learn to turn together, beach rapidly, launch under pressure, and hold formation outside a harbour entrance. People watching from the quay understand the change without needing it explained. These are not only merchant ships. The cause arrives beneath a copper-coloured sunset. A trading vessel returning from the southern passage limps into port with half its mast missing. One side is blackened by fire. 2 sailors lie beneath sailcloth near the stern, and a third has an arrowhead buried in his shoulder. The captain is carried ashore, pale with blood loss, clutching a broken seal that once marked jars of royal oil and bronze tools. A Revol harbour has seized the cargo. Its ruler, a lord of steep coastal cliffs named Mester, has demanded payment from all vessels passing his waters. When the island captain refused, Mester's men attacked among narrow rocks where escape was difficult. They took the goods, killed those who resisted, and sent the damaged ship home with a message. The sea belongs to whoever has courage enough to close it. In the morning court, the dead sailors' families pour wine into the earth. No one speaks while their names are called. Their mothers stand rigid. Their wives hold children who do not understand why men avoid their eyes. The damaged ship rests in the harbour where all can see it, a wounded body made of wood. Anger travels quickly through a maritime people. Every merchant imagines his own deck under arrows. Every crewman feels the insult upon his own skin. Captains gather before Atlas with weapons at their sides. They ask for punishment, not negotiation. They say that safe measures, sacred oaths, and guarded warehouses mean nothing if foreign hands can strip an island vessel and laugh from their walls. A ruler who protects only his docks has not protected trade at all. Atlas listens from a seat carved with waves and bulls. His face remains still, but he understands the decision waiting before him. A harbour protected by law must now be protected by force. For 12 days, the shipyards do not rest. Bronze spearheads are issued from central stores. Shields are covered with hide and painted with a circular emblem of water around a dark centre. Bakers prepare hard loaves for crews. Healers wrap linen, honey, needles, and herbs in sealed baskets. Priests carry seawater into the temple court and bless the prows of the assembled vessels. Families gather at the quay in silence as fathers, sons, and brothers climb aboard. The fleet leaves before dawn. Oars dip into smooth water with the measured sound of breathing. No drums announce them. No songs rise from the benches. The ships follow the coast beneath fading stars, their sails furled until the morning wind strengthens. By midday, lookout vessels return with news. Mester's harbour is enclosed by cliffs, protected by a timber gate across the narrow entrance, and crowded with captured cargo still being unloaded. Atlas studies the inlet from the deck of his ship. A direct attack would meet arrows from above. Fire against the gate might trap his own vessels in smoke and wreckage. so he waits until the tide turns seaward. Two small craft, disguised beneath patched sails, move toward the harbour carrying jars that appear filled with trade oil. Mester's guards allow them close enough to shout insults. Then the crews leap overboard into hidden boats, leaving the drifting craft to strike the timber barrier. The jars are not filled with oil for sale. Flame climbs suddenly along the gate. Smoke twists between the cliffs as defenders rush downward with water and hooks. Island archers rise from concealed positions on the rocks outside the inlet. Their arrows fall on the exposed platforms. Horns sound once. The main fleet rows forward in a single surge, bronze-tipped prows breaking through the burning barrier as charred beams give way. Inside the harbour, battle is brief and brutal. Mester's men have courage, but not preparation. Ships tied close together cannot manoeuvre. Warehouses block retreat. Island warriors land in disciplined groups, shields overlapping, spears held steady. They do not scatter to plunder. They move first toward the watchtower, then the granary yard, then the residence where Mester waits with his household guard beneath a painted doorway. He is taken alive. Before the gathered harbour people, Atlas does not order the town burned. He returns seized goods to surviving merchants. He forbids the killing of families and craftsmen. But Mester is stripped of his authority, his weapons, and his harbour seal. The captured port must accept fixed dues, safe passage for island ships, and a resident keeper appointed to hear disputes and watch the warehouses. Its boats remain its own, provided they no longer hunt traders under protection. The meaning is clear to everyone on the quay. The island has crossed a threshold. It has not merely survived an attack or avenged its dead. It has reached into another harbour and changed the law there. Merchants cheer because routes are safer. Warriors cheer because victory has rewarded discipline. Captains look at the sea and see not a boundary, but a field of influence spreading from port to port. When the fleet returns home, the harbour fills with lamps. Families search the decks for familiar faces. Some find them. Some receive shields carried without their owners. The damaged trading vessel is repaired and placed at the head of the procession, its scorched planks left visible. Behind it come captured standards, recovered jars, bronze weapons, and a sealed agreement from the conquered harbour. In the temple court, Atlas places no treasure upon himself. He lays a broken arrowhead beside a bowl of seawater. The island has discovered the cost of power and the temptation within it. A ship can carry bread, metal, and friendship across the horizon. It can also carry commands. Beneath the evening torches, the harbour shines with pride, grief, and a new awareness. The sea road is open, and those who guard it have learned they can rule it. The first seal is impressed into wet clay at sunrise. It bears a simple image, 3 waves beneath a horned crown. The design appears on jars of oil, bales of wool, ingots of bronze, sacks of grain, bundles of timber, and tablets carried aboard ships. It is not merely decoration. It announces that the goods have been weighed, recorded, taxed, and placed under the protection of the island's authority. In harbours once governed by custom and suspicion, this small mark begins to change everything. A merchant arriving with cedar planks no longer bargains separately with every warehouse owner. He presents his cargo at a public quay, where officials test its quality, record its quantity, and assign the payment due. A sailor whose cargo is stolen can appeal to a harbour magistrate rather than gather cousins for revenge. Captains are given agreed places to anchor, agreed dues to pay, agreed rules for fresh water, repairs, and the hiring of local labour. Order is slower than plunder, but it lasts longer. Across the sea lanes, island vessels begin to sail in patterned groups. Merchant hulls carry grain, cloth, pottery, oil, and metalwork. Narrow escorts move beside them, their crews trained to watch reefs, strange sails, and smoke rising from hostile shores. At important crossings, small fortified stations appear on headlands. Their watchmen tend beacon fires sheltered behind stone screens. waiting for the moment when a warning must leap across darkness. A flame on one cliff awakens another, within a single night. News of danger can travel from a distant inlet toward the central seat of command. A pirate flotilla spotted near an outer island, a foreign ruler refusing the agreed dues, a merchant convoy overdue in winter weather. The sea remains immense, but it no longer feels entirely beyond reach. Signals, patrols, messengers, and records begin to draw its scattered harbours into one nervous, listening body. On the island itself, roads press outward from the royal centre. Stone is laid where winter mud once swallowed cartwheels. Timber bridges cross shallow ravines. Milestones, rough at first, mark the distance between orchards, mines, villages, shrines, and storage yards. Along these routes move mule trains laden with ore, salt, charcoal, wine, timber, wheat, copper tools, woven sailcloth, and jars sealed against theft. Travellers meet patrols carrying staffs of office and spears of enforcement. The roads do not simply carry goods, they carry the presence of rule. In upland settlements, households are counted. Not every person receives a written name, for writing still belongs to a trained few, but the produce of each district is measured. A valley may owe barley, a coastal village may owe dried fish, rope, or ship crews. A forest community may owe timber and charcoal. Miners may deliver copper according to marks kept on clay tablets. Payments are gathered into storehouses built with thick walls and narrow doors. The island is learning to feed power deliberately. There are murmurs, of course. A farmer who loses one basket from 10 to a collector may wonder whether distant harbours are worth the burden. A boat builder whose sons are called for fleet service may look at unfinished work and feel the weight of decisions made elsewhere. A miner carrying ore downhill may see the bronze ornaments of an official and understand, with bitter clarity, where labour sometimes ends. So authority learns to make itself useful. Reservoirs are dug where drought has long threatened villages. Retaining walls save terraces from heavy rain. Public granaries open during failed harvests, though not always generously, and never without record. Shipyards employ men who once survived on uncertain fishing. Temples sponsor feasts at planting and harvest, distributing bread, roasted meat, fruit, and drink beneath banners bearing the royal seal. Protection and obligation are made to appear as two sides of the same offering. At the palace workshops, scribes develop a disciplined world of signs. They sit in shaded rooms where shelves hold tablets, seal stones, cords, tags, and boxes of counted tokens. Their fingers are stained with pigment and clay. They record cargoes received, rations issued, timber assigned, work crews gathered, weapons repaired, sailors lost, captains promoted, ambassadors received, and tribute delayed. A mark that once represented a jar now sits among columns of measures, districts, dates, and duties. The written sign is quiet, but it travels beyond memory. An aging official can die, and the stores remain known. A ship can depart, and its cargo can be checked upon return. A provincial keeper can be accused of withholding tribute, and clay may speak against him. These records cannot prevent deceit. They may even make deceit more elaborate. But they allow a kingdom to imagine itself as something continuous, something greater than the mind of any single ruler. Beyond the royal island, coastal settlements are drawn into agreements of different kinds. Some accept garrisons after resisting, others send gifts before a spear is raised, hoping to keep their own rulers, festivals, and laws beneath a lighter burden. Some offer daughters and sons in marriage alliances, binding influential families through blood, ceremony, and mutual hostage. A harbour rich in purple dye may supply cloth. An island with deep forests may provide masts. A dry coast with salt pans may send white blocks stacked like stone. Not every bond is a chain. Not every alliance is free. Envoys now move in carefully prepared processions. They carry gifts suited to rank bronze bowls, ivory handles, rare pigments, woven cloaks, carved boxes, fragrant resin, ceremonial blades, and drinking cups with curling sea designs. They also carry words chosen with equal care. Friendship can mean obedience spoken gently. Protection can mean payment delivered regularly. A marriage feast can settle what fleets might otherwise decide. In distant courts, the island's customs begin to be imitated. Local rulers ask for seals cut in the same manner. Shipwrights study the island hulls and copy their balance of speed and cargo. Priests borrow sea symbols for their shrines. Nobles acquire drinking vessels painted with bulls, dolphins, spirals, and concentric water rings. Children in foreign ports watch arriving fleets and grow accustomed to the horned crown fluttering above the docks. Influence enters a town long before conquest needs to. Yet the system depends upon constant motion. Bronze requires tin and copper from separate places. Ships require forests that take generations to regrow. Crews require grain from fields that cannot fail too often. Garrisons require food, pay, loyalty, and replacement men. Officials require trust or fear. A sea power must keep its roots alive, because the moment vessels cease to arrive, the illusion of closeness begins to weaken. For now, the movement is magnificent. At sunrise, ships depart in ordered lines from the main basin. Some turn toward green islands shining in the haze. Some point toward mineral coasts where smoke rises from furnaces. Some carry officials to inspect distant warehouses. Others bear builders, priests, translators, soldiers, and families willing to settle under an expanding protection. Their sails catch the same light, bright against the restless water. In the capital, a hall of records grows beside the temple precinct. Its walls are painted with harbours linked by flowing blue lines. Small plaques name ports, coves, river mouths, mines, timber hills, and storehouses. At the centre is the island, not immense on the wall, but surrounded by symbols of tribute and allegiance. Those who enter are meant to understand that the kingdom is no longer confined to one shore. Night settles over the docks, and clerks continue their work by lamp flame. Outside, the tide rises against stone quays built higher and stronger than those of older generations. Warehouse doors stand sealed. Patrol boats rock gently in guarded water. Somewhere beyond the horizon, another beacon burns, watched by men who have never entered the palace, yet whose vigilance helps hold its world together. Power has become a system of routes, measures, duties, promises, and signs, and for a while, every current seems to lead home. The city awakens to the sound of water. It moves through stone-lined channels, beneath small bridges, past gardens of myrtle and fig, along quays crowded with painted boats. In the early light, the concentric districts catch the sun one by one. Outer workshops glow amber with furnace fire. Inner residences shine with pale plaster and coloured stone. At the sacred centre, roofs plated with bronze reflect dawn so brightly that arriving sailors shade their eyes. This is the city as its people wish to be seen. At the public market, awnings unfold above long rows of goods. Fish lie silver and wet on beds of seaweed. Bakers stack round loaves beside cakes sweetened with honey and dried fruit. Women examine woven cloth dyed red, blue, and deep purple, rubbing it between finger and thumb before agreeing upon a price. Potters display bowls painted with dolphins, waves, leaping bulls, flowering reeds, and stars set around circular borders. The air carries many scents together: crushed herbs, smoke, hot bread, brine, resin, olive oil, perfume, animals, and the faint metallic breath of nearby workshops. Voices rise in different accents. Traders count with pebbles on boards. Porters call for space. A musician seated near a fountain draws a soft melody from a reed pipe. And for a little while the market seems less a place of buying than a gathering of the world. Yet wealth is never merely displayed, it is interpreted. Beyond the busy stalls, broad stairs climb toward temples where the meaning of prosperity is carefully shaped. Worshippers arrive, washed and freshly dressed, carrying bowls of grain, garlands, small cups of oil, polished shells, or figures moulded in clay. They move more quietly here. The paving stones are cool beneath bare feet. Incense curls upward in thin pale columns, disappearing beneath painted ceilings where sea creatures and constellations swim together. The greatest sanctuary rises at the central height, enclosed by walls decorated with metals brought from distant shores. At its entrance stand carved bulls, massive and still, their heads lowered as if listening to the footsteps of every visitor. Inside, the god of the sea is not imagined as gentle. He is giver of roots and fish, maker of horses, shaker of ground, guardian of springs, and lord of the force that supports all island life while never fully submitting to human desire. Before his image, the powerful become careful. On festival mornings, a sacred bull is led through streets swept clean and scattered with leaves. Its horns gleam with oil. Ribbons fall against its dark neck. Children stand on low walls to see it pass, while elders murmur blessings for full nets, steady harvests, healthy births, and ships safely returned. Drums beat slowly, matched by the measured feet of dancers moving in rings. Their patterns mirror the city itself, outward, inward, outward again, as though human bodies might join the order of water and stone. The sacrifice is solemn, not hurried. The animal's strength is praised before it is offered. Portions are burned for the divine powers, while other portions are cooked and shared among those gathered in the precinct. Sacred ritual ends in a communal meal, because divine favour must be tasted as well as proclaimed. Smoke drifts above the roofs, wine darkens cups. People return home believing that the bond between city, sea, and heaven has been renewed. In the palace courts, ritual takes another form. There, ambassadors walk through gardens irrigated by narrow streams. Pomegranate trees lean over tiled pools. Peacocks step among shaded colonnades, their feathers opening like jewelled fans. Walls carry scenes of ships entering peaceful harbours, orchards heavy with fruit, wrestlers at games, priests lifting cups, and royal families seated beneath symbols of sun and wave. Nothing in these images shows hunger, illness, shipwreck, or grief. A palace tells the truth its rulers require. Visitors dine in halls where lamps burn in bronze stands and musicians play behind screens of carved wood. Servants bring fish seasoned with herbs, roasted lamb, breads dusted with seeds, figs soaked in wine, cheeses wrapped in leaves, and delicate pastries filled with nuts. Drinking cups pass from hand to hand as interpreters turn foreign praise into familiar language. Gifts are revealed slowly, each object announcing the distance from which it came and the respect it is meant to express. Outside those courts, another splendour lives in skill. Metal workers hammer thin sheets into bowls patterned with spirals and foam. Jewellers string beads of amber, shell, lapis-coloured stone, gold, and glass paste into necklaces for weddings, burials, and ceremonial display. Carvers shape ivory into combs, handles, sacred animals, and tiny boats no larger than a palm. In rooms bright with open windows, painters grind mineral colours and prepare walls for scenes of sea gardens, athletes, birds, and lilies bending under invisible wind. Art gives form to the things a people love and fear. Everywhere, the sea appears. It coils along jar rims, it crosses floor mosaics, it gleams on pendants worn over the heart. Dolphins represent delight and safe passage. Octopus arms spread across vessels with a beauty that is also unsettling. Bulls carry the controlled violence of strength. Concentric circles suggest order, enclosure, return, and perhaps the hidden structure of existence itself. For the educated families, Learning becomes an inheritance as valuable as land. Children of officials and merchants sit with tutors in shaded courtyards, copying signs onto clay or waxed boards. They learn measures, cargo lists, prayers, family histories, formal greetings, songs used at ceremonies, and the stars by which sailors keep direction. Some study healing plants and the setting of broken bones. Some memorize laws and judgments. A few are taught the old sacred accounts, stories of divine unions, ancestral voyages, springs brought forth from stone, and kings whose justice made the island fruitful. Knowledge creates its own hierarchy. Many labour beneath sun and salt without ever entering a schoolroom. Dock workers carry jars until their shoulders thicken and bend. Field hands return at evening with soil caught in the lines of their fingers. Divers descend for shell and sponge in water that chills the breath. Servants move almost invisibly through fragrant rooms. Hearing poetry they are not expected to recite, and seeing gold they may never touch. Still, festivals bring the classes into one shared brightness. When the moon reaches its appointed fullness, streets are lined with lamps. Boats carry small flames upon the canals until each ring of water seems filled with floating stars. Singers answer one another from opposite bridges. Young couples exchange wreaths. Children receive sweet cakes shaped like fish. Sailors offer miniature sails at shrines. Even the poor may wear a freshly washed garment and stand among music, smoke, laughter, and the reflected glow of the sacred centre. For a while, the world seems perfectly arranged. To die within such a city is to enter an order as carefully imagined as life. The wealthy are placed in chamber tombs with cups, seals, jewels, weapons, painted vessels, and foods prepared for the unseen journey. Sailors may be buried with shells or small models of boats. Children receive toys and charms. The poor are given simpler rest. Yet even modest graves hold gestures of tenderness, a bead, a bowl, a flower, a stone chosen by a grieving hand. Above all this beauty lies a powerful belief that the universe has pattern. The sea circles the land, the canals circle the sacred hill. Seasons circle through planting, harvest, sailing, storm, and renewal. Families circle through birth, marriage, death, and remembrance. The ruler preserves balance. The priests interpret it. The craftsmen embody it. The people live within it, trusting that order on earth reflects an order greater than themselves. As evening settles, the city becomes a necklace of fire upon dark water. From the highest terraces, one can hear distant music, oars tapping gently against boat sides, and the murmur of thousands of lives enclosed within the shining rings. Temples gleam, markets quiet, gardens release their night fragrance. A mother calls her children indoors as stars appear beyond the roofs. The sea reflects every light without revealing its depth. At the farthest headlands, towers now face the sea in every direction. Their fires are kept ready beneath tiled shelters. Their watchers know the shapes of friendly sails, tribute ships, fishing craft, patrol vessels, and foreign hulls moving uncertainly near protected waters. From the central island, commands reach outer ports through messengers, signal flames, sealed tablets, and captains sworn to the royal household. Maps painted on palace walls show coastlines joined by blue paths, each one bearing the mark of obedience. To those standing within the capital, the realm appears complete. Tribute arrives with the changing seasons, timber from northern hills, copper from dry mineral country, salt from pale coastal pans, dyed cloth from workshops across the water, grain from broad fields ruled by allied governors, ivory, resin, spices, rare shells, carved stone, and unfamiliar animals are unloaded under the eyes of officials. Every cargo strengthens the impression that no horizon lies beyond the reach of the island's fleets. When foreign envoys enter the city, they walk carefully. They pass guards in polished bronze, sacred courts fragrant with incense, gardens fed by running water, and walls decorated with images of obedience. They are seated below the island nobles at feasts whose arrangement is understood by everyone present. Their gifts are displayed publicly, measured not only by value, but by what they confess. A king who sends gold admits respect. A harbour that sends hostages admits fear. At royal ceremonies, the ruler appears before crowds in robes heavy with woven symbols of wave, bull, sun, and horned crown. Around him stand priests, admirals, judges, collectors, governors, and members of families whose names have become almost as old as the buildings they inhabit. Trumpets sound from terraces, incense rises, captured standards hang in the open air. The people gaze upward and see confidence given a human face. No one speaks publicly of limits. The fleet has never seemed stronger. Ship sheds line the sheltered basins, their roofs protecting rows of vessels built for speed and impact. Bronze is stored in guarded armories. Oars are stacked by the 100. Young men train in rhythm on the water, learning the discipline that turns many bodies into one moving weapon. Veterans instruct them with the seriousness of those who know that a moment of disorder can open a hull, break a formation, or lose a harbour. The admirals speak of new patrol zones, new anchorages, new waters requiring protection. That word, protection, has grown wide. Once it meant keeping fishing coves safe and escorting merchants past raiders. Now it means collecting dues from distant communities, replacing stubborn rulers, demanding ships for campaigns, and placing garrisons where resentment may ripen. Every new port added to the realm requires another watchtower, another warehouse, another official, another vessel prepared to remind local people what their obligations are. Power spreads like a net, and nets become heavy when drawn too far. In the records hall light the tablets multiply. Shelves groan with lists of tribute owed, provisions delayed, timber assigned, crews requested, repairs demanded, grain borrowed, rations distributed, penalties levied, and promises still waiting to be honoured. Clerks work late beside small lamps, smoothing fresh clay as messengers arrive with dust on their sandals or salt in their hair. The kingdom is wealthy enough to count almost everything, yet too large to see everything clearly. A governor in a far harbour may report full stores while concealing half the grain for his household. A collector may demand more than the measure appointed, knowing complaints take months to reach the palace. A captain may enrol men who exist only on a tablet, keeping their rations for himself. Records create the image of control, but a seal impressed upon clay cannot make a dishonest man faithful. Beneath this surface of order, small grievances deepen. Farmers watch wagons carry away harvests while their own winter jars stand less full. Woodcutters climb farther into thinning forests, seeking trunks straight enough for royal masts. Miners breathe smoke and dust in deepening pits, bringing up ore that becomes ceremonial splendour in rooms they will never enter. Mothers see sons called into fleet service for voyages longer and more dangerous than those known to their fathers. In the poorer districts of the capital, the empire feels less like glory than weight. Bread prices rise when grain shipments arrive late. Dock workers crowd at hiring yards before sunrise, hoping their names will be chosen. Injured sailors appear near temple steps, missing fingers, limping from shattered legs, offering old medals for food or wine. Behind high walls, noble households continue to host feasts, their fountains running cool through dry months because water reaches privilege before it reaches need. The distance between shining courts and tired streets begins to widen. Within the palace, another unease takes shape. The royal house has grown broad through marriages arranged across generations. Cousins govern districts, brothers command fleets, uncles oversee temples and storehouses. Daughters have been sent to bind powerful families, and their children now possess claims that can be whispered over cups in private chambers. As long as the ruler remains vigorous, these rival ambitions bow politely, but age changes the sound of a court. The king now walks with a staff during the longest ceremonies. His hair has whitened. He listens more often than he speaks, while attendants study every pause in his breath and every absence from a feast. His eldest son is disciplined, severe, admired by officers who value obedience. A younger son is generous, graceful, beloved among merchants and festival crowds. A sister's child commands ships and carries the dangerous appeal of victory. Each has friends, each has debts, each has listeners. Priests argue over sacred tradition. Admirals discuss the necessity of strength. Merchants favour stability and open routes. Provincial leaders wonder which claimant might ask less of them. Even servants become carriers of rumour, moving through corridors with folded cloth and wine jars while catching fragments of conversations that may soon decide the fate of cities. No blade has been drawn. The silence is more dangerous. Meanwhile, the realm celebrates victories with increasing grandeur. A newly subdued coastal town sends bronze doors for a temple. A successful expedition returns with strange woods, painted shields, and prisoners led through cheering streets. Poets sing that the island has mastered distance itself. Sculptors carve the ruler larger than life, standing above waves held in perfect submission beneath his feet. Yet the sea remains beyond flattery. A winter storm breaks several patrol ships against rocks far from home. No ceremony can restore seasoned crews lost in one night. A failed harvest in a tribute district reduces the grain expected at central warehouses. Officials demand the full measure anyway, fearing that mercy will appear weak. Families sell tools and animals to meet obligations. The payment arrives, but with it comes a bitterness no tablet records. Prestige can compel a bow, it cannot guarantee loyalty. From a balcony above the harbour, the aged ruler watches a procession of ships depart beneath bright banners. Their oars fall together, their hulls are provisioned, their captains have sworn obedience before the sacred fire. The scene is magnificent, the visible proof of a lifetime spent gathering the sea into one order. Yet as the sails diminish against the horizon, the harbour behind them seems strangely empty. The kingdom possesses more wealth than any living grandparent could have imagined. More ships, more officials, more dependent ports, more sacred monuments, and more names written into tribute lists. It has become powerful enough to mistake maintenance for permanence. Below the palace, water continues through the stone channels, smooth and obedient beneath the evening light. Above it, music begins for another banquet, and lamps are raised along the terraces. The city shines with the assurance of a world convinced of its own strength. But confidence has grown louder than caution, and every splendid ring now holds a strain no celebration can entirely conceal. The first refusal arrives in a clay jar. It comes aboard a small coastal vessel under a sail patched so many times that scarcely any original cloth remains. The jar is sealed, labelled, and carried past the guards into the records hall, where an official expects the usual statement of grain, timber, and bronze prepared for delivery. Instead, when the seal is broken, there is only dust inside, mixed with a handful of shriveled barley heads. Beneath them lies a small tablet bearing 7 words. There is no harvest left to give. The message is quiet, almost respectful, but everyone who reads it understands its danger. Tribute is more than food delivered to warehouses. It is the visible rhythm of obedience. One district failing may be misfortune. 2 may suggest drought. Many refusing at once become something else. A question raised against the entire order of the sea realm. The rains have come late across several dependent coasts. In valleys where green grain once rolled under spring wind, farmers walk among short pale stalks, breaking them in their hands and finding little within. Wells taste of mud. Goats gnaw bark from young trees. Parents serve broth thinner each evening, pretending not to notice when children search the bowls for what is no longer there. Still, royal collectors arrive. They come with tablets, guards, pack animals, and measures approved in prosperous years. They have instructions to take what is owed. They hear pleas in every village, and perhaps some pity the people. But pity does not fill the capital stores or feed naval crews stationed in distant ports. When household jars prove nearly empty, officials begin claiming seed grain, tools, animals, and cloth, that is when obedience breaks. In a dusty square near an inland shrine, an old farmer places both hands on a sack meant for next season's planting. A collector orders him aside. The farmer does not move. A guard strikes him with the shaft of a spear, and the man falls against the stones. For an instant, no one speaks. Then his daughter lifts a threshing tool and brings it down across the guard's shoulder. The village erupts. Stones fly from doorways. Women overturn measure baskets. Young men drag a collector from his mule. A horn sounds from the shrine roof, its note carrying across dry fields toward neighbouring settlements. By dusk, the tax party is gone, leaving behind broken tablets and 2 dead guards. By the following evening, 3 granaries belonging to royal agents have been opened, and grain is distributed beneath watchful villagers holding farm tools as weapons. Word moves quickly where anger has been waiting. Along the western coast, fishermen refuse to surrender boats for naval service. In timber country, workers lead officials into a forest road, strip them of seals and weapons, then release them without shoes. At a copper mine, labourers seal the entrance with stone and declare that no ore will leave until their families receive grain. Shrines once used to bless authority become gathering places where people swear to aid one another against collectors and garrisons. Some still fear rebellion more than hunger. They know what ships can do to an unprotected town. They remember soldiers moving through narrow streets, torches near rooftops, captains reading punishments aloud before gathered families. Many communities send their tribute as demanded, even while resenting every jar removed. Others wait, listening for news, unwilling to choose until they know whether resistance is a spark that will die or a fire large enough to shelter beneath. At sea, danger takes a different shape. Beyond the northern passages, rival captains have watched the fleet spread thin. They know where patrols have grown irregular, where garrisons depend on grain shipped across exposed waters, where local rulers have lost affection for their distant masters. These rivals do not arrive as one grand enemy beneath a single banner. They arrive like weather, separately at first, testing coves, seizing lone cargo vessels, offering alliance to resentful ports. A tribute ship disappears in calm weather. Days later, fragments of its hull wash onto a stony beach, along with 3 bodies stripped of weapons and ornaments. A second vessel is taken near a fog-bound island. Its surviving crew is released with a message carved into an oar: the sea is open again. Soon merchant captains refuse to sail without escorts, and escorts are already demanded elsewhere. Protecting storehouses, carrying soldiers, searching for raiders who vanish among coves known only to local fishermen. Every answer creates another weakness. When warships are sent north, rebellious harbours in the south drive out their appointed officials. When soldiers march inland to reclaim grain stores, foreign vessels strike unguarded docks. When commanders request more men, families hide sons in caves, orchards, and mountain huts. When higher taxes are announced to pay for emergency fleets, towns that had remained loyal begin to reconsider what loyalty now requires. Then the earth gives its own warning. Late one afternoon, as humid air hangs unmoving over the capital, cups tremble upon dining tables. Birds rise suddenly from tiled roofs. The first shock is short, a shivering through stone, followed by silence. People pause in markets and courtyards, waiting. A second movement rolls beneath the city with greater force. Masonry cracks. A temple column sheds fragments of painted plaster. Water slaps violently against the sides of the inner canals. The damage is not ruinous, but it is unmistakable. One bridge sinks at its centre and must be closed. Warehouse walls open along old seams. Several jars of stored grain shatter on floors, slick with oil and wine. At a sacred precinct, a bronze ornament falls from its setting and breaks the polished steps below. Priests cover the fractured place with linen, yet the sight has already spread through the city, carried by servants, dock workers, visitors, and those who always find meaning in a shaken altar. Whispers begin beneath ordinary conversation. Has favour withdrawn? Have sacred obligations been neglected? Are distant wars draining offerings meant for the gods? Has the ruler demanded too much from people and sea alike? Officials announce purification rites and public prayers. Bulls are selected. Processions are planned. But a ceremony can calm fear only when the crowd still trusts those directing it. At the palace gates, messengers arrive soaked with sweat and seawater. One reports that a governor has been killed by his own guards. Another brings news of a harbour opening its gates to foreign ships in exchange for protection. A third speaks of sickness among rowers crowded into barracks while awaiting deployment. A fourth carries a tablet so damaged by rain that only several phrases can be read: stores burned, roads blocked, reinforcements required. Inside the council chamber, voices rise. The admirals demand a concentrated fleet to crush the rival captains and reopen the routes. Grain officials insist that ships are useless without provisions and call for punishment against rebellious farms. Priests urge acts of reconciliation, offerings, and relief for desperate communities. Royal relatives accuse one another of weakness, secret bargaining, and ambition hidden beneath advice. The ruler listens from a high seat, while each solution threatens to worsen another wound. Outside, the people feel decisions through absence. There is less bread in the market. Fewer lamps shine along poorer lanes. Families gather beside the harbour to search incoming vessels for sons who have not sent word. Sailors speak of smoke above friendly ports and unfamiliar banners flying where trusted seals once opened warehouse doors. In taverns, men lower their voices when naming commanders. In shrines, women leave offerings not for victory, but for the safe return of those caught inside a conflict they did not choose. One evening, storm clouds build over the sea without wind. The harbour darkens beneath them. Patrol ships pull ropes tighter against the quays. In distant districts, beacon fires appear almost together. One, then another, then several more, until the horizon itself seems troubled by flames. No single warning explains them all. Rebellion, raiders, failed shipments, uncertain allies, restless earth, hungry villages, divided rulers. The signs blur into one gathering pressure. Beneath the clouded sky, the shining city waits for news it no longer knows how to answer. The final day does not begin with a trumpet or a decree. It begins with people looking upward at a colourless sky. Wind has fallen away from the streets. The canals lie strangely smooth, their surfaces holding the pale reflection of towers and temple roofs without a ripple. Along the quays, ships remain tied close together, for few captains wish to sail while the horizon carries a dark, bruised line where sea and cloud have merged. In the markets, bread is scarce, voices are low. A woman trades a bronze bracelet for 2 small sacks of barley, turning the bracelet once in her palm before letting it go. Near a shrine, an exhausted sailor leaves a broken shell beside a lamp and touches his forehead to cold stone. He does not ask for victory. He asks only that his family be spared whatever is approaching. Then the earth moves. The first shock throws people against walls. Jars fall and smash in storage rooms. Horses rear in courtyards, their eyes white with panic. The pavement beneath the central avenue buckles in a long uneven line, scattering stones as though some buried creature is pushed upward from below. Temple bells sound without human hands, shaken by the trembling of their towers. A pause follows, brief and terrible. People pour from houses into open spaces. Parents call children by name. Guards shout instructions that dissolve into confusion. Priests emerge carrying sacred vessels, but their careful procession breaks apart when a second convulsion rolls through the city. This time, a column falls across the temple stairs. A bridge over one of the inner waterways collapses into foaming water, taking carts, animals, and fleeing citizens with it. From the harbour comes a cry unlike any heard in battle. The water is drawing away, ships settle crookedly into mud, fish leap upon the exposed floor of the basin, the bronze fittings of sunken wrecks, lost in older accidents and forgotten by nearly everyone, catch the flat daylight for a final moment. Along the seawall, people stare outward, unable to understand the immense empty space opening where water should be. Some run to gather stranded fish, others stand frozen. An old captain turns from the exposed harbour and begins pushing strangers uphill. His voice is hoarse, his gestures frantic. He has seen the sea withdraw during smaller disasters on distant coasts. He knows that absence can be more frightening than abundance. A young mother understands only his fear, but it is enough. She takes one child in her arms, pulls another by the wrist, and begins to climb. The horizon rises. At first it resembles a shadow under the clouds, a dark bar stretching from one edge of sight to the other. Then the bar becomes a moving height of water, crowded with broken reflections, surging debris, and white tearing foam. It advances without anger, without hesitation, obeying laws deeper than prayer or kingship. Men who have commanded fleets suddenly have no command to give. The outer harbour receives the blow. Ships are lifted from the mud and driven inland like toys. The seawall disappears beneath a roaring whiteness. Warehouses split open, surrendering grain, timber, pottery, weapons, records, and the treasured goods of 100 voyages. Water rushes into streets built for festivals and tribute processions, spinning carts against pillars and hurling roof beams through painted doorways. Those on higher ground hear the city breaking. It is a sound made from many endings at once, stone grinding against stone, animals crying from enclosed yards, wooden roofs collapsing, people shouting across water that separates them by only a few steps, and yet might as well be an ocean. Smoke rises where overturned lamps ignite oil upon floating wreckage, and flames drift strangely on the flood. Bright islands moving through ruin. At the sacred centre, the temple court fills with seawater. Priests attempt to carry the most revered image toward an upper terrace. The statue is heavy, fashioned for stillness, not escape. One man slips, another loses his grip. The image falls onto the paving and cracks across the face. For an instant, those surrounding it stare in silence. Then water strikes the steps, and the broken god vanishes in a rush of foam, timber, garlands, and shattered bronze. The royal household is no safer than the poorest lane. Silk robes drag through mud, seals of office are dropped and lost. Men who once argued over inheritance now struggle together to force open a gate swollen shut by water. A child is passed upward through a window, an elderly ruler, too weak to climb quickly. Refuses the arms reaching for him and orders them toward the young. Whether anyone obeys, no record can say. The city had been shaped as a pattern of circles, each ring protected, ordered, and beautiful. Now water turns that design into a maze. Channels overflow into roads. Bridges vanish. People fleeing one flood meet another pouring from the opposite direction. Walls built to guard wealth trap the desperate behind them. Storehouses meant to preserve life become sealed chambers filled with drowning darkness. Higher on the slopes, survivors gather under rain that has finally begun to fall. They are soaked, bleeding, stunned, holding whatever the water allowed them to keep. A child grips a wooden toy with one wheel missing. A merchant carries no gold, only the hand of a wounded servant. A priestess has saved a small bowl of spring water, though the sacred precinct itself is gone. Farmers, sailors, nobles, craftsmen, widows, guards, and slaves stand side by side, no longer arranged by rank, but by the simple fact that they are breathing. Below them, another wave crosses the drowned lowlands. By nightfall, the city is almost impossible to recognize. The royal roofs have collapsed. The market is a dark inlet filled with fragments of doors and boats. Fires burn briefly, then hiss beneath rain and rising water. The harbour, once carefully separated from the city, has become the city, Farther out, storms cover the sea lanes, hiding the fate of smaller settlements and distant ports. Those who survive cannot remede. The earth continues to tremble. Wells are fouled with salt and ash. Fields lie buried under debris. Boats that can still float are repaired with desperate hands. Others leave by mountain tracks toward quieter coasts. They carry little food, fewer treasures, and a grief too large for any single telling. Some carry names of the dead. Some carry songs. Some carry fragments of lore, prayer, craft, and warning. In foreign villages, their accounts will be heard beside fires. Listeners will ask how wide the island was, how rich its city, how high its temples, how many ships it commanded, and why such a place could not save itself. The survivors will answer as survivors often do, with memories sharpened by loss and enlarged by the need to make suffering meaningful. Their children will repeat the tale. Their children's children will add new distances, new splendours, new judgments from the gods. Centuries pass. Kingdoms rise on other shores. Languages change. The sea smooths its surface above drowned foundations. Broken keys, pottery, tools, walls, and bones. Fishermen sail over hidden places without knowing what rests below their keels. Storms move sand across old stones. Coral and weed enter cracks once cut by human hands. Silence performs its patient work. At last, the name appears in another world, preserved in the words of a Greek philosopher who tells of a mighty island civilization overcome by catastrophe. Whether his account holds memory, warning, invention, or threads of all three, the image endures because it speaks to something people never entirely forget. No city is beyond time. No fleet commands the sea forever. No palace, however luminous, can secure the future against every weakness within and every force without. Yet loss is not the same as disappearance. A vanished world may remain in stories, in questions, in the outline of a harbour beneath water, in the sudden hush that falls when we imagine lamps going out in a city no living eye can see. The waves continue their slow breathing above Atlantis. Moonlight rests upon them. Far below, perhaps, there are stones still waiting in darkness, touched only by currents and drifting sand, and as the night deepens, the lost island grows quiet again, neither proven nor forgotten, held gently between history and dream.